Our next presentation is happening via Zoom. Now, I'm just going to wait until we get a thumbs up from our tech crew to make sure that Leah Bach from Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment is online. This presentation's on National Waste Policy Action Plan 2019. So what I might do is, while they're just making sure that Leah's on Zoom, I think these conferences are really valuable, but there's a lot of sitting and listening. So one of the most important ways to put information into your brain for a longer time, as opposed to just sitting and listening passively, is to say it or to write it yourself. So maybe with the person next to you, share something that you've learned that is going to be taken back to your own communities as a useful thing so far from the first two presentations, because there's only so long that you can sit passively before the information goes through. So say it out loud or write it down. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to chat to the person next to you. What's something you've taken home or back to your work that's been useful so far? And we'll get Leah online. Hello. Hey, friends, if you want to grab your seats, we've had some great success on that Zoom and our next presenter is ready to go. So if you want to grab your seats, straight after this presentation is morning tea and we can continue these really great conversations and networking. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll try to make a lot of opportunities throughout the symposium for you to have these kind of discussions after the presentations, because I think it's really valuable to actually articulate the information that you're getting that you're then going to take back and use in your own work. It makes it a little bit more real, a little bit closer to home, a little bit more transferable. So our next presenter is from the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, presenting on National Waste Policy Action Plan. Can I please get you to give, I guess, a tropical round of applause that maybe Leah's going to be able to hear from all the way interstate through the Zoom. Please put your hands together and welcome Leah Bach, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, this is my first Zoom meeting after all of 2020. It's the first time I've had to jump on board. So I'm hoping you can hear me and that you can see the first slide of my presentation. Can I get a thumbs up from someone in the front, if that's okay? Yep, excellent. Okay. So my name is Leah Bach. I'm Acting Director in the Recycling Modernization section from the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. I'm joining you today from Ngunnawal country, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all meeting today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. And I extend that respect to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people here today. So today I'm going to cover off on a couple of the initiatives that our department has at the moment, which will be the Recycling Modernisation Fund and the Food Waste for Healthy Soils Fund. Sorry, that one's a new one. I'm still wrapping my head around the acronyms. So I will also take some questions at the end if that's okay. Let's see if I can get my slides to work. There we go. So the Recycling Modernisation Fund was announced in July 2020. And it goes hand in hand with the COAG's decision for the national waste export ban of the paper, plastic, glass and tyre material. So those export waste bans, as you might be aware, are slowly rolling out with mixed plastics ban kicking in on 1 July and glass was banned from export in 1 January of this year. So the Recycling Modernisation Fund is $190 million that is being delivered through a national partnership agreement with the states and territories. And what we're seeing is investment from the states, the Commonwealth and industry as well. And we're currently leveraging over 600 million in investment across the country. In the past, 645,000 tonnes of paper, plastic, glass and tyres was being exported each year. So this program is looking to address those waste streams and that the impact of banning those. So the RMF, along with a range of other initiatives, are looking to create new jobs and provide a bit of a boost to the recovery and recycling industry. So the fund actually is very much focused on infrastructure that sorts, processes or remanufactures those products. With the waste ban, some items are still able to be exported overseas, but what we're seeing is a lot of stuff being processed here and remanufactured here, which is really great. As I mentioned, the fund is delivered through the states and territories. So we have agreements with all states and territories except the Northern Territory at the moment, but that one is getting its final dotted I's and crossed T's happening at the moment. So I expect to see that being announced very soon. With the projects we have so far through the other states and territories, we have 52 projects at the moment, more being announced in the coming weeks. A lot of the states have run grants programs with the funding, and so we're seeing the outcomes of those programs being announced. We have 26 projects so far that are dealing with plastic, 17 that are dealing with glass, 7 with tires, including mining tires, which is really great. We often see those going straight back into the mines, so very happy we're diverting those from landfill. And we have 7 projects that are looking at paper and cardboard at the moment. Another program that was announced recently in the budget was around food and organic waste programs. So the government's investing $76 million to divert 3.4 million tonnes of organic waste from households and for use into agricultural soils. So that's part of the Food Waste for Healthy Soils initiative. And that funding is going to be delivered in a very similar way to the Recycling Modernization Fund. So we'll see that money come out through the states and territories and be available to project participants that way. The other bits of work that we look at the moment, all of these programs really sit under the National Waste Policy Action Plan. So for my team in particular, where we focus on the Recycling Modernization Fund, what we're looking at is really around getting that infrastructure out, building that additional capacity. And on top of that, we capture a lot of information about what that capacity is going forward. So we're getting a very good sense of what is happening in Australia, whereas we might not have had great access to that information in the past. We're also exploring a couple of research projects at the moment in our team. We're looking at legacy waste in the Northern Territory through a couple of the councils and sorry, I've forgotten the acronym. It's Rick Rouse team from the waste recovery. I can't even think of them. Sorry, I apologize. That's very bad of me. We're doing some work with them around legacy waste in the Northern Territory to understand what is there. And they're going to propose some options to us around what we could look at as future opportunities to help in those areas. We also have another piece of work where we're looking at an initiative by the University of New South Wales, which is a portable micro factory, which is processing a lot of plastic and glass waste in particular, and turning those into building construction materials such as tiles, laminated look like tabletops, and sound acoustic tiles and things like that. They actually have a building in Melbourne where they've actually done a lot of the fit out with the products that they've been producing from recycled waste. And so we're having a look at how those might actually be really beneficial in regional areas of Australia, particularly addressing some of those issues around transporting waste. And then there is a last part to our Recycling Modernisation Fund that we have coming up, which is around projects actually in regional and remote areas. So later this year, we'll be opening up some additional funding in the Recycling Modernisation Fund through the states and territories around projects that address specific needs in those communities, which we're very excited about. We've seen quite a few regional and remote projects coming up through the fund already, through the state-based grants programs. And we're looking forward to being able to fund some more of those, because we think there's some really unique challenges out there, and there's also some really unique solutions to them. Happy to take some questions. And I will note that the department will be at the ALGA conference next week. So if there's some other programs that you're interested in, or you want to ask some more questions about these programs I've mentioned today, there'll be an opportunity at the conference if people are attending to catch up with people from the department there.
Great, thanks, Leah. Can we have a round of applause for Leah for that presentation? Were there any questions? I've got the microphone so that she can hear what is said because the microphone in the room doesn't pick up voices. Were there any questions, friends? Yes? Hey.
Thanks, Leah. This is Deepika from Northern Institute, Charles Darwin University. I am very happy that there is so much funding, but what I'm also worried that as we increase the recycling rates, we're even increasing the rate of production of waste in Australia. So why is the funding only concentrated to end of the pipeline solution of recycling and not looking at it as a social issue, which the waste is?
Yeah, sure. The programs I've spoken about today, you're correct, they very much are at the later end of the recovery and recycling process. And that is largely due to the impacts of things like the coag waste ban. And so looking to create a bit of balance in the system. If we're no longer exporting that, then we need to make sure we have the capacity to deal with it here. So those two initiatives are quite tied hand in hand, but they are not the only initiatives happening at the moment. So you may have heard of the National Plastics Plan, and I'm just trying to dig up if I've got notes on that in front of me. It actually sits in another team, but there are the other initiatives through that plan around various targets, the initiatives by the states and territories to place bans on single-use plastics and other materials. Combined, those initiatives are kind of reducing what we're producing in the first place, and then also giving us the capacity to deal with them. So there are a number, I'm just trying to, dig up some other notes on that bit of work in particular. It does sit outside of my area of expertise. So I can very happily send through some information to Meredith also around some of those other projects, if that's of assistance.
Yep, great. And we've got another question for you, Leah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Look, following on from that point, I hear of countries that actually reduce the tax on products that are made so they can be repaired, and rather than recycling and trying to recycle the whole product, to encourage things to be built so they can actually be repaired. Is there anybody looking at doing that, in sort of reducing, so there's an incentive to produce items that can be improved rather than having to throw it out and buy a whole new one?
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. I am not aware of anything specifically in my area, but there is, we have been doing a bit of work recently with the textiles industry in particular, around not just people donating clothing to organizations like the Salvation Army, but what else can we do with the textiles and how are we processing that? So I haven't seen any work or discussion around taxes on products, but there is quite a bit of work going on around incentivizing companies, incentivizing increased use of recycled materials in products in the first place. And we're seeing that through some of the bigger producers in the country, through Coca-Cola, through Pepsi, through Nestle, who are setting their own targets within their organisations.
Yeah, I can help you with that one if you want. Sorry, it's Gail from WEMA. Productivity Commission just released a report on the right to repair. So that's a public document that's in the forum at the moment. So we should all get on board and comment, because they're looking at, particularly with e-waste, they're bringing in legislation around right to repair. So Productivity Commission's doing some work on that. Really good timing, was released about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
I've got another question for you, Leah. Hold on a second.
Yeah, Leah, it's Peter from Northern Waste Reduction Services and Peat Soils. Just a quick question. There's a lot of talk about grants and funding that's available for infrastructure and development programs. What's the best, I guess, point of contact or path to go to try and tap into some of these? Because, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the grants and money available in southern regions, but there's very few, I guess, success stories up here. Allowing private enterprise to get in and get some traction on this.
Yeah, that one's a nice easy one for me. So particularly around the recycling, modernisation and food waste to healthy soils. The contact we have for the Northern Territory is in Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And I have an email address that I can read out if that's of help. So it's waste.nt.epa@nt.gov.au. Because all of our funding is through the states and territories, and that's just the nature of some of our constitutional arrangements around funding between states and the Commonwealth. They are the best point of contact. There is a bit of information on environment.gov.au around how we're managing waste and some of these funds. There are also some additional funds around, particularly in the Commonwealth, that often are on grants.gov.au. And business.gov.au is also a really good place to link into some of those grants that are available as well. And you can set up notifications around various topics, so you can know when those things are available. The Department of Industry has also been doing quite a bit of work recently around modern manufacturing, and they have a recycling and clean energy stream where they've been taking project proposals around integration projects and collaboration projects. And I believe there's another round there opening up very soon. So Modern Manufacturing Initiative is the one to have a look at there. And I believe a lot of the other Commonwealth funding at the moment has actually closed for the financial year. So I think a lot of those are coming up next year once again. So things like the Better Regions Fund or community development grants are often where we see a lot of these waste and recycling projects come through also.
All right, thanks for that.
Great. Hang on a second.
Department of Environment. And yes, you can talk to me. Thanks, Leah.
Is that Leah?
Yeah, Leah. So the reality is, I guess the funding opportunities through the Recycling Modernisation Fund are quite limited and quite prescriptive. If it's around soil enhancement and using organics to improve soil usability, I understand there's some details coming out in the near future around that from the Commonwealth. Having said that, Phil Horsler from the Department of Industry, Trade and Technology, I think it is these days, he and his group through Plant Industries are looking at how to, I guess, use B grade product, horticultural product and composting and organics to improve soil quality in the horticultural industry up here in the Northern Territory. So if you want those contact details, I can give it to you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. I've got another question over here.
So I'd just like to say something about that lifestyle, particularly white goods, that they're getting shorter all the time. You can buy a toaster now for $10, but it only lasts for 12 months. everything. A washing machine used to last for 15 years. Now you're lucky to get 5 out of it. So unless a national waste management policy addresses manufacture, there's a lot of lost effort there, because all of those goods are going to end up in the waste management system.
Yes, we have been looking. There is a new team in our area that's just been set up, and so they're starting to build the scope of their work at the moment around e-waste in particular, including appliances and white goods, smart products and devices. There is quite a lot of them. They have been very much built in a lot of cases, particularly handheld tech devices and smart devices, to have a relatively short lifespan by design. And so there's going to be some work through the Commonwealth around e-waste. And there is also a bit of work through the television and computer recycling scheme. And I know that there's been a bit more of an expansion of that through the product stewardship scheme at the moment, with Mobile Muster now accepting a wider range of products as a trial to look at how they can bring in a bit more of that stuff that is currently going to recycling. I know that doesn't quite address the white goods, but it will be captured in that work also.
All right, Leah, I've got one more question for you, I believe.
Sure.
Hi, Leah. Rick Ralph here. In respect to the grants that are actually being handed out, and I think it's the manufacturing one, you've got sort of like thresholds of $1 million. They start for projects that start at $1 million, and then there's parties have to add their dollars to it. One of the challenges we have is that some of the projects that we need money for in total are probably only about $1 million. So we only need probably $300,000 or $250,000. Is the federal government or your schemes, are you going to change that threshold level so it allows a lot of smaller stuff? Because I noticed all the projects that you've got there, 26 projects taking 300,000 tonnes or whatever. From the territory perspective, we don't need big. We need lots of little, which will make lots of big. And I guess the thresholds you have are unrealistic for what we need in remote and regional areas. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. And apologies again for getting the acronym wrong earlier. The Recycling Modernisation Fund, any thresholds that have been set by the states and territories there. We don't have, from the Commonwealth perspective on that, any minimum or I guess the maximum amounts of the amount of the fund available. But we, in the context of the remote and regional round that we are starting to put together at the moment, we've actually just had discussions as recent as yesterday around that, and whether we design that so that we can pick up and encourage those smaller cost projects, I guess. They can be really large impacts and very particular solutions to some very particular problems. So we've been discussing how to make that round very flexible to be able to support that, and to potentially even look at having a smaller project stream and maybe a larger project stream. We haven't settled on that just yet, but we are looking at how do we address that question in the RMF for regional and remote. I am aware that things like the Modern Manufacturing Initiative did have some caps around it, and that some of the states have also done something similar where they've had larger projects and smaller project kind of streams within their RMF programs. But thank you for raising it, because we were just discussing how to do that. So we could have a chat offline about any thoughts you might have about that too.
Excellent. Any other questions, friends? Or we have Leah online, or no? In which case, can we please put our hands together and thank Leah Bach for that presentation?
Thank you so much for having me.